All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Facebook. We're going to do our Battle of Midway celebration. We have a great presentation by our Chiefs Mets, who are responsible for our sense of heritage, and we'll have a cake cutting to take care of that and distribute throughout the crew during our COVID-19 modifications and mitigations. So, Chief King, are you leading this?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Welcome, everybody, to our Battle of Midway commemoration. Today we would like to cover some of the aftermath and impact of the battle, as well as honor the lives of the sailors that were lost. So although the three American carrier air groups were outnumbered, they won this battle through courage, determination, and heroic sacrifice. By the time the battle ended, 3,057 Japanese had died, and 307 Americans were killed. The U.S. lost the carrier Yorktown and the destroyer Hammond. Against the loss of that one U.S. carrier, the Japanese lost 4, all of which had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor.
3 small islands bear mute testimony to the events of 1 week in June of 1942. Midway was the magnet that drew 2 navies into battle that defined the war in the Pacific. The Japanese Navy had dominated action in the Pacific, beginning with their attack on Pearl Harbor and subsequent advances. Our forces counterattacked with the Halsey Doolittle raid on the Japanese homeland. Admiral Yamamoto felt he had to draw the American aircraft carriers into the decisive battle. His choice for a battleground was the American base at Midway Atoll. The Japanese fleet would outnumber the ships of the American fleet at Midway, but the U.S. possessed one strategic asset. Cryptographers at Pearl Harbor, under the command of Joe Rochefort, had broken enough of the Japanese naval code to discern that Midway was the Japanese objective. Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, Admiral Chester Nimitz, decided to risk his carriers based on the knowledge of the enemy's intent and ambush the attacking Japanese. As the sky brightened on the morning of 4 June 1942, Japanese aircraft were sighted by a patrolling PBY and soon confirmed by radar. The message: many planes heading Midway. In response, B-17s, B-26s, and Grumman Avengers took off from the runways of Eastern Island and headed towards the Japanese carrier force. 200 miles to the northeast, the U.S. carrier force waited. Taking off from the runways of Midway were Marine Corps pilots in Brewster Buffaloes and Wildcats to defend the atoll. These planes and their valiant pilots were no match for the Japanese Zeros escorting the bombers headed for Midway. Midway was bombed by the Japanese, causing damage to the hospital, runways, hangars, and fuel depot. The American bombers that had left Midway and headed towards the Imperial Fleet scored no significant hits on the Japanese carrier force under Admiral Nagumo. But the continued attacks by U.S. Navy, Marine Corps, and Army Air Force planes arriving at different times sowed confusion among the Japanese commanders and disarray in the battle formation. Rear Admiral Frank Fletcher and Admiral Raymond Spruance launched their air groups. The fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo planes from the American carriers flew towards the enemy, while one U.S. submarine found the Japanese fleet and engaged. USS Nautilus, under command of Lieutenant Commander William Brockman, was depth-charged and attacked by Japanese destroyers, including the Arashi, leading the screen away from the carriers. Enterprise Air Group Commander Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey sighted Arashi through a break in the clouds. Arashi's wake led McCluskey to the Japanese carrier force and the 10 minutes that wrote a page in our naval history. Dive bombers from Yorktown and Enterprise arrived simultaneously over the enemy carriers. Just after 10 a.m., U.S. planes released their bombs. By 10:10, 3 Japanese carriers were burning and out of action: Akagi, Soryu, and Kaga. The tide of the Pacific War had begun to turn. Hiryu, the 4th Japanese carrier, survived Yorktown's torpedo planes and launched a counterattack that severely damaged Yorktown. Planes from Enterprise bombed Hiryu later in the day and left her burning. The bulk of the Midway battle took place on June 4th. The next day, submarine Tambor caused a collision between 2 Japanese cruisers that were subsequently bombed by our carrier planes. Yorktown, after magnificent damage control work, was being towed toward Pearl Harbor. The Japanese submarine I-168 penetrated our destroyer screen and torpedoed Yorktown and destroyer Hammond. Yorktown sank the morning of 7 June. Midway was one of the most decisive actions in the war in the Pacific. Inspired leadership led the way for the fleet and all the sailors, Marines, and Army airmen who contributed to our victory.
Admiral Nimitz had one critical advantage: U.S. cryptanalysts. They had partially broken the Japanese Navy's JN-25 Bravo code. Since early 1942, the U.S. had been decoding messages stating there would soon be an operation at Objective AF. Captain Wilfred Holmes devised the ruse of telling the base at Midway to broadcast an uncoded radio message stating that Midway's water purification system had broken down. Within 24 hours, the code breakers picked up a Japanese message indicating that AF was short on water. As a result, the Americans entered the battle with a good picture of where, when, and how, with what strength the Japanese would attack. The Japanese, by contrast, remained mainly unaware of their opponent's true strength and dispositions even after the battle began.
So we have an opportunity today in this past weekend to remember all those that fought at the Battle of Midway. Unfortunately, we couldn't have a grander celebration, but we certainly did things to commemorate the battle itself and those who fought during this time of the war. As we know and stated, it was clearly a turning point for the Pacific force and being able to actually get some momentum and head towards the west for the Pacific campaign, leading to many numerous other events and reliberating the atolls and the places where the Japanese have taken over. It also prevented multiple attacks in numerous countries and plans that the Japanese had, and really set off the launch point for us to gain momentum and ultimately declare victory during World War II on the Western campaign. So I want to thank again the Chiefs Mess for putting this together and making sure that we commemorate and maintain our sense of heritage. And without further ado, we'll cut the cake. Who's going to cut the cake? All right, line three. All right. Yep, to the side. So we did another great cake by Cife, certainly making sure that we have this opportunity, and it's also quite delicious. All right, we're going to start. We're going to cut here, all right? All right? And smile with your eyes, right? Okay? And we'll look over here. All right. All right, thanks for joining us today, and you know, more opportunities down the road for you to join us during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.